How this all started is that John French wanted to put in a geothermal heating system into his house because natural gas is not available in the community, and he talked to me and asked whether I'd be willing to sell him a piece of ground so that he could do that. And I agreed, and we applied for a consolidation of a piece of my ground with his piece of ground that he has to set up an area large enough so that he could have a geothermal heating system for his house. And that process, once it goes to community planning, then has to be reviewed by other government departments such as highways to make sure that there's access, power to make sure there's no problems, telephone, municipal, whatever groups there are that have things to do, and one of them is the public health. Peter Ross, a public health officer for the Parkland, PA Parkland Health District, sent me a letter telling me to shut off my neighbor's sewage, John French's sewage. And here's what it says. You are hereby directed to immediately and maintain disconnected the power supply to the effluent pump that supplies effluent to the jet surface disposal system. And even Peter Ross, in the same act, is not able to do that, because it says, a public health officer shall not enter a private dwelling without a warrant issued pursuant to subsection 4 unless the occupant of the dwelling consents to the entry. Therefore, he was asking me to do something that he was not legally allowed to do. The real issue here is that there is a grandfathering clause that allows people to use a jet disposal system if the system was in place prior to 1994. And I will read the clause for you. Any regulation made pursuant to this act may be made retroactive to a day not earlier than a day on which this act comes into force. And this act came into force in 1994. So Peter is simply ignoring that fact, and therefore, and by ignoring it, then he's able to say that these things, the jets are non-compliant. I knew about this section of the Act because in the 90s I was an MLA, and myself and two other MLAs, in reviewing the Act before it went into the House, insisted that there be a grandfathering clause allowing the systems that were in place to continue to be put into the Act. So it took me some time to find where it was, but once I did, I actually sent a letter to Peter Ross telling him about it. Most acts, when they come into the legislature, if they are going to make a radical change in what is taking place, are so structured as to not cause a lot of economic hardship for the people that have the old things in place, or you can call it's called a soft landing, and this act has that in it. And that means that people who had sewage disposal systems in place prior to the Act coming into force were not forced to build according to the new standards that came in at the time. But anyone that was building after that would have to build to the new standards. I sent a letter to Peter Ross requesting him to provide me any legal interpretation which he used to support his letter of September 25th. The material that he sent back consisted of a technical guideline, number 501, which in essence, had he followed, would have provided me with the necessary letter so that the subdivision and the consolidation could have gone forward. And the second thing is an inter-office memo, which in essence said, don't follow the technical guideline. And he did. He followed the inter-office memo, neither one of which are legal documentation or following the legal things that you'd find in either regulations or an act. In Peter Ross's first letter, he had sent out a plumbing permit. And I sent back in this letter as well that I did not need a permit because I had no intention of doing any of the things that the permit allows you to do. I had no intention of making any repairs, of extending the system. I had no construction in mind and was not establishing a new system. It was already in place and had been for 30 years. About a month later, Ken and Doreen Agri, two senior citizens in Belbutte, received a letter from Peter Ross telling them to disconnect their jet system and in the following manner. You are directed to permanently disconnect the effluent pump from the two-compartment septic tank and have the sewage removed by a sewage hauler licensed by Saskatchewan Environment. Should it be discovered that the effluent from the sewage system on your property is being disposed of in contravention to the Saskatchewan Plumbing and Drainage Regulations, the Saskatchewan On-Site Water Disposal Guideline, further legal action will be pursued under order issued under the authority of the Public Health Act 1994, with the non-conforming system being declared a health hazard. This system was in place prior to 1994, and this took place a month after I had sent Peter Ross a letter pointing out the section of the Act with the grandfathering clause in it. On May the 1st, Peter Ross called a public meeting for the community of Belbutte. At that meeting, he said that they would be discussing the sewage survey and reviewing approved methods for sewage disposal. He also indicated at the meeting that all of the sewage systems in the Belbutte community were non-compliant and would have to replace them with systems that would cost each individual about $10,000. He was using as his rationale for that the Saskatchewan On-Site Wastewater Disposal Guide. It's interesting because if you read in the introduction of the On-Site Disposal Guide, it says, "This is not a permit and the information contained herein does not override, substitute, or replace the requirements of the plumbing and drainage regulations and all other applicable federal and provincial legislation and municipal bylaws." So what they were doing is trying to avoid having to deal with the grandfathering clause, which states that if your system was in place prior to 1994, it does not have to be changed. Following the meeting of May 1st, a number of citizens in the Belbutte community sent a letter to the CEO of the Prince Albert Parkland Health Region, asking for her to meet with them regarding what was taking place. We received a letter from Dr. Lenoir which states the following: "Our public health inspectors will be proceeding as planned on the basis of Section 25 of the Public Health Act, health hazard. Their continued action to evaluate the safety of your sewage system do not relate to Section 46.2, the notwithstanding clause." This is not the case. In our country and its legal system, you must understand how the system works. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms overrides all laws passed by Parliament or the legislature unless the notwithstanding clause is applied. And the Charter of Rights demands the principle of fundamental justice. That is that laws, if they apply, and you cannot go through and cherry pick just which section you want. The Health Act, which was passed in the Saskatchewan legislature, provides powers to the Executive Council to establish regulations. And the regulations then provide power to those authorities who are implementing it in the community. Dr. Lenoir cannot do what the regulations do not allow him to do, or what the Health Act does not allow him to do. It is this fundamental structure that keeps our democratic country together.